After earning his Ph.D. in philosophy at the University of Tennessee, John Zavodny spent the next 20 years in higher education. In 2019, he joined the Maine Seacoast Mission as president. John grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, the youngest son of a sharecropper's daughter from the Deep South and a first-generation American from Eastern Europe. The son of a U.S. Navy sailor, Zavodny is proud to now be a small part of the Maine Seacoast Mission's seagoing history. He is the first member of his family to complete college, and he understands firsthand the transformative role education can play. John's conviction that investment in place, family, and community is key to long-term individual wellness, which guides his leadership of the mission. Dr. Zavodny's Ph.D. work focused on the ironist pragmatism of American philosopher Richard Rorty, who famously encouraged philosophers to give up academic pursuits and apply their rigorous intellectual training to matters of social edification. In that spirit, Zavodny evolved from a college professor to a systems-thinking leader, first within higher education and now as president of the Maine Seacoast Mission. John and his wife Anna live in Ellsworth, Maine. In their spare time, they enjoy gardening and home improvement projects, playing music, and hiking and cross-country skiing in beautiful DownEast Maine. Welcome to the PR Maven Podcast, a podcast all about growing your network and building your brand through traditional and digital networking techniques. I'm Nancy Marshall, the PR Maven and CEO of Marshall Communications. I've been strengthening brands through PR for over 35 years, and now I'm celebrating the success of executives, influencers, business owners, and entrepreneurs from all around the world, all of whom have cultivated their brands and broadened their networks through traditional and digital networking methods. Each week, I interview one of these interesting and influential individuals and provide an opportunity for you, the PR Maven Nation, to gain insights from their strategies and stories. So stay tuned for this week's episode, and thanks for listening. So welcome, John, and tell us about the Maine Seacoast Mission.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I'm grateful to have the opportunity to talk about the mission today and the amazing communities we work with. I'm also proud to count myself as part of the PR Maven Nation. I want you to know I ordered my PR Maven t-shirt and ball cap from the merch store this morning. I look forward to wearing them proudly all over Maine. So Maine Seacoast Mission has been around since 1905, and we're one of the oldest nonprofits in Maine. We have been serving some of the Maine's most isolated coastal and island communities since that time. The Maine Seacoast Mission has operated a boat or a ship continuously since that time in 1905, starting with a 15-foot friendship sloop named Hope that was operated by a couple of ministers who started the mission. And now we have a 74-foot boat, steel-hulled icebreaker called the Sunbeam 5. It's actually the fifth in the series. We also have a campus in Cherryfield, which is in the heart of Washington County, where we operate education, food pantry, community building, housing rehabilitation programs there in Washington County. And then our headquarters is now based in Northeast Harbor.
Well, it's a wonderful organization, and I will say that I do serve on the board of the Maine Seacoast.
You do indeed.
I'm very proud of that, and it's just such a rich organization in that it serves so many people in so many different ways, and that does make it complex, I think, for someone in your position to manage all of the different aspects, but I also know that you have a wonderful team that works with you.
We do. We have an amazing team. We have about 30 regular employees and then about 70 part-time employees, most of whom are focused on our after-school programs in Washington County. So yeah, it's an amazing staff, a terrific team. And, when I began with the mission, that's the one thing you can't really find out about from the internet or from, the organization's 990 is what are the people really like? And so as I got to know both the board of the mission and the staff, that's when I really settled in and felt comfortable and at home with the work of the mission.
Yes, absolutely. I just am so awed by all that the employees do and have seen what happens on land and at sea, and that is the tagline. Tell me the tagline exactly. It's
lighting the way by land and sea.
Lighting the way by land and by sea, yeah. And so there's after-school programs that happen through the EDGE program, and then there's the programs that are delivered through or on the Sunbeam, the boat. And of course, the Sunbeam is the sexiest thing that the mission has. And the fact that this boat goes out to the islands and delivers health care, and there's library books, and there's a little coffee shop on board. And there's so many wonderful services that are provided to island residents. I think that the Sunbeam is really a strong symbol. And actually, the Sunbeam is on the logo of the Maine Seacoast Mission. Isn't that right?
That's right. It is. The Sunbeam is literally our flagship.
Yeah.
And we now have a flag. We have a Maine Seacoast Mission flag after the refit. As you well know, the Sunbeam has just come out of the shipyard where it was for a little over a year in Belfast, and was there for a kind of a routine midlife refit. And we did a lot of corrosion remediation and really rebuilt most of the interior of the boat. And one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we did when we left the shipyard was to really, fly the flag of the Maine Seacoast Mission. And so we had a flag commissioned, and now the Sunbeam has a mission flag, along with the American flag as well.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that's important is that a lot of people who live on islands are independent souls, and they think they don't really need much help from the mainland. But I think that one of the things that differentiates the Seacoast Mission is its long history, and it's part of the fabric of the communities there on the islands. So people do welcome the assistance that comes aboard the Sunbeam because people trust the Maine Seacoast Mission.
Yeah, absolutely. The mission's been around forever. The mission's been around longer, than any one resident. And folks grew up on the islands and in our coastal communities knowing, the mission boat, whether it was Sunbeam 4, 3, 2, 1. And we hear mission stories everywhere we go, whether we're on the islands or on the mainland, about, getting that white wrapped Christmas present from the Maine Seacoast Mission, or maybe it was that somebody was a mission scholar and got a scholarship. Everywhere I go, if I'm wearing a Maine Seacoast Mission logo, I budget extra time so that people can stop me and tell me their mission stories, which I hear every day, and it's so gratifying. But you're right, the trust is where it all begins with the mission. And we are grateful to be a trusted partner in the communities we work in.
So how long have you been part of the mission, John, and why did you choose to go there?
I have been with the mission almost 2 years now. I started in February, and so it's been almost 2 years. I came from Unity College, where I was a longtime faculty member and then administrator. And one of the really transformative experiences that I had as a teacher was in 2006, I guess it was, spring of 2006, when my wife was the medical director at the college, and she and I took 24 Unity College students to New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and we did relief work. And that experience was really transforming for me, for many of the students, I think, as well. But it really shifted my understanding about teaching and mentoring and what it means to really, help young people find their way in the world, and that there was so much to be done outside of the classroom. And so from that experience, we started a little group we called the Unity College Traveling Humanitarians. And because the logo or the mascot was the ram, so we jammed the ram in there, humanitarians. And we did some relief work we went back to New Orleans. We also went to Tennessee after some tornadoes there, and then did some work around Maine. And that service work was really, transformative to me in my life, in my professional sense. And so I always, since then, I always sort of thought that someday I would like to work for a nonprofit where I could spend all of my time really focused on community building, on service, and working in community, get my hands a little dirty and, really dig in with community full time. And so when the mission opportunity came up, I knew the mission from the past, and it was really intriguing. So we started chatting, and here I am.
Well, you spoke earlier about how you like to listen to people's stories about the mission and the mission's impact on their own lives. And I think from knowing you over the past 2 years, I think one of the keys to your success and the impact you're able to have is that you do listen intently, because you care, you truly care, and it's authentic, and people can tell that you're authentic in caring about them. And I mean, that's so symbolic of the mission overall, too.
Well, thank you. I don't know what to say to that other than thank you. I'm gratified that it's clear that I care.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, people who say, "How are you today?" And they don't really care how you
right.
are. They're just trying to say something. But I know when you say something like that, you mean it.
I do. I used to teach, when I was at the college, I used to teach a course on quietism, like Eastern philosophy and quietism. And one of the exercises we did was try not to say anything we didn't entirely mean. And so we did this like quiet hiking retreat up the Cutler Coast and a backpacking trip with my class. And the only rule was you could talk, but you could only say things that needed to be said, whether it was, good morning and how are you doing? Or can you hand me some, fuel for the stove? Whatever it was, it had to be sincere. It had to be really mindful. And the first night we were out there camping, and it was March. It was my first year in Maine. No, I guess it was later than that. It was more like April. And there was snow on the ground. It was really, I came from the South where, in April it was summer. And so we went on this trip. There was snow on the ground. And the first night, one of my students came up to me and trying to obey the rule, he said, so these people are lost. And there were a couple of folks who had, gotten lost on the trail, and it was dark and they were backwoods. And so we quietly walked them out to their car.
Well, that was an awesome service that you provided to those poor lost souls. So I'm sure they were glad that to run into the quietism class.
Yeah. I told my students, I said, let's not freak these people out. Okay. Yeah. Let's make sure let's tell them what's happening. We're going to break our rule here for a minute.
Right.
We're going to talk to them, and let's get them in some dry clothes, and let's get them back to their cars. This doesn't have to be weird.
I'm just picturing if I was in your quietism class and those people came along, I would have been raising my hand, please, because then I could have a reason to talk and carry on a conversation. Right. I don't think I would get a very good grade in the quietism class, John.
I think you'd be great. It's just a matter of being mindful and really thinking about, what you're doing and making that, making a real connection person to person rather than, focusing on the trivialities. And I think you're one of the most sincere people that I know. You just, you're an external processor.
Yeah, right. That's a good way of putting it. So one of the parts of your new job with the Maine Seacoast Mission is living in Mount Desert Island or near Mount Desert Island. And obviously, that's such a beautiful place. What is it about that area that attracted you and your wife to move there?
Well, we came from Belfast, so we weren't far away, and we know the area well from, little excursions here, hiking and cross-country skiing and, in the park. We didn't know how beautiful the DownEast area was, beyond the park and beyond, let's say, Schoodic Peninsula. And so that's been a really wonderful part of relocating here, is exploring all those nooks and crannies up the coast. Aside from the physical beauty, and we like to be outside, we like to hike and ski, but, the work is so real here and so needed, and the communities are so welcoming and so resilient and amazing that, the work here is very attractive because you've got eager people in community that are just ready, they're ready to partner, they're ready to do the right thing. And so that was all really appealing to me. I came from, like I said, Waldo County, which is very similar. There's a very strong, young agricultural community there. It's got a real back to the land history. And, folks are ready to build community. And DownEast Maine, in my experience, is very much the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that in Cherryfield, which actually happens to be the blueberry capital of the world, there are a lot of people involved with Wyman's blueberries. And I think that's a really interesting aspect of both the land and the economy in DownEast Maine. And so I know that there are a lot of the people involved with the blueberry business that are also part of the mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Wyman's has been a very good partner for the mission. And, so with the other businesses that are, part of the economic fabric down east, we had the opportunity in August to be a backup center for Wyman when they were bringing in seasonal workers and they were worried about COVID outbreaks. And they did really well. And, we're excited to be part of the support system, for the seasonal workers in Maine, in DownEast Maine, and to really, work with them when they arrive. We were able to, this year, out of our food pantry there, provide quite a bit of culturally relevant food that they can't normally get in the area. We partnered with another local nonprofit, Mano a Manos, whose mission is really to support the Latinx community in DownEast Maine. And we partnered with them, and we were able to, do a significant food distribution for that seasonal worker community. And then we did it again when the wreath makers came to town for a very similar reason just, a couple months ago.
That's fascinating. I think that the Latinx community that exists in DownEast Maine is something that not a lot of people know about. And they do bring a lot to not only the towns where they live, but also the school systems as well. And also then there's the food, as you said. So again, that's another interesting aspect of the fabric of our society in Maine that makes it such a wonderful place.
Absolutely.
So you also serve the islands. Can you name off some of the islands that the mission serves and tell us what makes them unique?
Sure. We have regular services to 10 of the unbridged islands, and these are east of Boothbay Harbor. Let's see if I can get them. Frenchboro, Swans, Great Cranberry, Isle Ho, Islesford, Monhegan, Matinicus, Islesboro, and then Vinyl Haven and North Haven. I had to use my fingers, but I did it.
Good job. Well, those islands are beautiful, for one thing, but what makes them unique? I mean, the kind of people that want to live on an island off the coast of Maine, that, they have a different kind of a persona. They're rugged individualists, as I said before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and each one is different. On my very first Sunbeam trip, it became very clear to me that, waking up on Matinicus is very different than waking up on Frenchboro. And, the cultures are different. The geography is different. Some have, schools with kids in them, and some don't have any kids at all. Some are really oriented right around the harbor, and some are, the communities are more spread out. But I think you're right. I think the thing that all these communities have in common is that they have a really close relationship with what I would call isolation. You have to embrace a certain degree of isolation if you're gonna live in these remote island, unbridged communities. And it is the isolation, I think, that is somewhat attractive, to folks, but it also can be the biggest challenge on the islands. And so you're always walking this, tight wire with isolation, with, independence versus, needing an extra measure of support. And our crew is fabulous at honoring and supporting, the autonomy of individuals on the island to make decisions, that are right for them and their families, and being there for those island communities like we have for, over a century now.
Can you tell us about the healthcare services that are offered through the Sunbeam and how that works exactly?
Sure. We have a telemedicine clinic on the Sunbeam. It's very small. It's really what it is, an adapted crew cabin that was turned into a telemedicine facility, has a, state-of-the-art camera and interface, and we are connected with broadband internet even when we're on the islands. And so folks can come to the Sunbeam and they can meet remotely with their healthcare providers, and some meet with, their family providers, some meet with specialists. We have, folks who join for, therapy sessions, and we have a full-time nurse. Her name is Sharon Daly. She's amazing. She's been with the program since the beginning of the telemedicine program with the Sunbeam for, I think, 18 years or so now. And, is really an incredibly trusted member of the island community. And, when I've been out with Sharon, she insists on walking, on the islands. Wherever we're going, she insists on walking. And she says it's because that makes her more visible to folks on the islands. They know that she's there if she's, visibly walking up and down the roads. And it gives an opportunity for folks to come by for what she calls truck visits. So, as you can probably imagine, men are men, and typically men are not big into, making their healthcare appointments. I don't think I'm generalizing here. If I am, I'm, part of the problem. So I'll include myself in this. And so the guys on the island may not come by the Sunbeam for anything more than a cup of coffee and a cookie, but they will stop Sharon, in their truck. They roll down their window, they hang out the window of the truck, and they have what, Sharon calls a truck visit. And I was witness to one of these. We were walking down the road, somebody stops. I think it was on Idaho. And I make myself scarce. I kind of walk off and pretend like I'm really interested in the local flora. There I'm inspecting, bushes on the side of the road while Sharon has this 20-minute truck visit. So, Sharon Daly is a home health nurse by training, and so she is an incredible asset to the folks on the islands. She is, I would say she's part public health nurse, part social worker, part, technology support for folks. And, she really does it all to help folks on these islands stay connected to healthcare.
You didn't mention part therapist, but she's probably part therapist also, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, this is a wonderful conversation, John. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back. But first, we're going to I want to tell you about my new book, Grow Your Audience, Grow Your Brand, which is available now on Amazon.com as paperback or Kindle or Audible edition. And the book includes actionable advice on growing a network and growing a brand by taking care of your audience. We're going to be giving away a free Kindle version if you go to prmaven.com/giveaway. And now we're going to do our book giveaway, and we'll be back with more from John Zavodny in just a moment.
Do you want to grow your client or customer base? Perhaps increase brand awareness? Maybe tell your unique story more effectively? Of course you do. But you may be worried that you don't have enough expertise to make that happen. Well, no worries, PR Maven Nation. Let the PR Maven herself, Nancy Marshall, show you how easy it is to get your message across effectively using a powerful yet simple tool, a message map. Nancy's training is often called informative and constructive, well-designed and impactful, with a perfect blend of theory and real-life experience. You will leverage Nancy's expertise to create your own message map when you register for this comprehensive online video training course, which is broken down into 4 easy-to-understand modules. Normally, this course is priced at $147, but for listeners of the PR Maven podcast, that's you, PR Maven Nation, it's only $29 when you enter the code word podcast during enrollment. It even includes a workbook and bonus content to guide you through the process. So go to prmaven.com and click on the Message Map Mastery course to enroll today. Remember, enter the word podcast during enrollment for a special discounted price of $29.
Welcome back, and today we're talking with John Zavodny, president of the Maine Seacoast Mission, and I want to dive right back in with more questions. So, John, you come from a background in education. The mission is involved in education and much, much more. Which aspect of your job do you love the most?
Yeah, that's a great question. I do love the education component. I think working with young people and providing support and programming for them, I think is so rewarding. You know, when I look at young people, it makes me hopeful. You know, I see so much ahead of them and I see so much potential that it's just, it's naturally inspiring to me. I do love the education piece. I love working with all the programs, though, really. And, I would say watching, whether it's a student or one of our seniors or anybody from the community, watching them light up when they engage with their community, when they, are able to see how much they matter to the community. And when we can be a part of that, when I can play a small part in helping people understand how much they matter to the other people in their communities, to our staff, to their own families, I think it is, incredibly rewarding. There's a lot of recent research around mattering and, how important it is for a life of wellness, that people understand that there are others in their communities, in their families, who really love them and depend on them. And, that is not something that we can just take for granted. And we need to, every day make sure that the people around us understand how much they matter. And I think it's when I see those connections made that I'm the most grateful that I'm with the mission.
I hadn't really thought about that because, many people get that mattering from their families, but many don't. And so, if the community can be an extension of the family and an organization like the Maine Seacoast Mission to help people feel like they matter, I think that's great. And I actually have also witnessed the scholarship ceremony that the Maine Seacoast Mission holds for its scholarship recipients. And those young people, I can see why you love working with them, because I light up when I hear their stories too. They're amazing.
They are. They're so poised and so put together. Sometimes they're not, and that's okay. When you're an educator, you have to approach everything from a learning and growth opportunity mindset, and every dead end or every shortcoming is it's an opportunity to reflect with them. And one of the things I love about young people is that as long as they trust you, they are so happy, to think about their own lives and so happy to reflect on themselves and their place in the world. But, they have to trust you and you have to have that relationship. So
that goes back to the relationship, again, that the organization, the Maine Seacoast Mission, has with the larger community there based on its history since 1905. So it's almost like it's something that is intrinsic in residents from the islands and the community down east.
Yeah, it's baked in, the island residents. So we do surveys, we do, feedback with island communities. And our data says that 90% of the members on the communities on the islands to which we travel with the Sunbeam, 90% take advantage of our services on the islands. And, that could be just a cup of coffee and a cookie, in the Sunbeam salon there, but it could be a lot more. And folks say, even on days when I don't come down to have a meal on the Sunbeam or, check in with Douglas, our chaplain, even on the days when I don't come down, just seeing the Sunbeam in the harbor makes me feel safe and gives me a sense of hope. And it reminds me that, the mission cares and that people care about us on the islands. And so, yeah, I think there's so much to be said for being a fixture in the community. I think folks would miss the mission and would miss the Sunbeam if we weren't there. And that is the best testimony that I think we can give to our work.
Absolutely. I know they would. So if people want to get involved with the Maine Seacoast Mission, what should they do and what can they do?
Sure. Well, the easiest and most straightforward things would be to check out our work on the internet. We're at seacoastmission.org. We're also, on all the major social platforms, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And if you search for Maine Seacoast Mission on any of those, you can follow us and keep track of what's going on. And, keep your eyes open for service opportunities. We also, we are a nonprofit and we operate on the support of generous donors. And the most straightforward way to support the work would be to get involved that way. And we try to make it as easy as possible online to do that electronically.
That's great. And as you said, there are opportunities for volunteerism throughout the year as well, if somebody wants to do something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So what does a day in the life of John Zavodny look like?
Right now, it probably looks a lot like everybody else's day. A lot of time at home, a lot of Zoom meetings. When we're not in COVID times, my day is a lot more interesting because I'm usually traveling to either one or more of our various locations. So I might go to Northeast Harbor, to have a day at the office with the work there. And Northeast Harbor is also where the Sunbeam is harbored. And so, we might be going out for a day trip to one of the islands, which is, whenever I'm on the Sunbeam and we're underway, I just, have one of those, I can't believe this is my job sort of moments. And I spend a lot of time down east, too. I actually live in Ellsworth so that I can be sort of halfway between the Sunbeam, where the Sunbeam harbors, and our campus in Cherryfield. And so, very often I'm headed down there. And there's always something happening in Cherryfield at the DownEast campus, whether it's a food pantry distribution or, visiting one of our Edge after school sites. Yeah, so my days typically pre-COVID, hopefully post-COVID, have a lot of variety in them. Right now, I spend a lot of time staring at my computer like everybody else does.
I know, I do too. I think it's interesting for those listeners in PR Maven Nation who might not know about the term down east. In Maine, because we have such a long coastline, the schooner ships would sail down and east. And when we say down, they would be running before the wind and sailing actually towards Bar Harbor and on towards Canada, actually. So the parts of Maine that are close to the Canadian border, past Ellsworth, if you're on coastal Route 1, that's what we refer to as down east. And some people might call it up because if you're looking at a map, it's up north.
I had to train myself not to say up, down, east.
Yeah, right.
I'm going up, down, east. People are like, don't say up, down, east.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So, John, is there a book, an app, or a website that you have found helpful in your career and your life, and why?
Yeah, a lot of them. I listen to a lot of podcasts these days, and I'm assuming you mean something aside from the PR Maven podcast and grow your audience, grow your brand. I'm going to just assume that you want me to invite people to pay attention to something other than that. Although
I'm going to make you the president of the PR Maven fan club.
I gotta say, I can't wait for my hat to get here. Yeah. So right when I was beginning with the mission, I was listening to podcasts. And I was listening to the Alan Alda podcast. He has a podcast called Clear and Vivid. Alan Alda, Hawkeye from MASH.
Right.
Yeah. And there was one particular episode that he did with an author named Paul Bloom, who's a researcher. And he had a book that came out, shortly before that called Against Empathy. And it was the subtitle was The Case for Rational Compassion. And I was so interested in this episode of the podcast that I, got the book and looked at it. And I would recommend it to anybody, especially folks who are interested in marketing and PR, especially in nonprofit, marketing and development. And the nugget there is, it's called Against Empathy. And, he's not really against empathy. He's against using empathy as the primary way for policymakers and folks like us to make decisions about how to try to help in community. And his argument goes that if you focus too much on individual anecdotes and the stories of individuals, then you don't get the appropriate big picture of, the systematic forces that are at work in our communities. And so rather than focusing on that kind of individual empathy, we should rather approach these decisions from a position of what he calls rational compassion. And I understand that as, a systems thinking way of making, the best difference in the community that you can based on all the information. And, for me, it was challenging as I was transitioning to my work with the Maine Seacoast Mission because, so much of what we do in fundraising and in marketing is telling individual stories, right? I mean, this very highly personal narrative approach to sharing the work that we do. And so, I think I take it as a kind of something to pay attention to as we move through our work, that the programmatic decisions that we make have to be based on what's best for the community as a whole. But I think we find a lot of our personal motivation, and I think we make connections with, new donors and new friends of our organizations really through engaging with these highly individualized and personal stories. So Paul Bloom, Against Empathy, The Case for Rational Compassion is the book, and the podcast is Clear and Vivid with Alan Alda.
Thank you. Those are great recommendations, and I haven't heard of either of them, so I've written them down. And I do know that I have listeners in PR Maven Nation who actually order every single book that's mentioned and listen to every podcast and download every app. So I know that people will appreciate that. So thank you, John.
Well, there you go, Paul Bloom. When you get that spike, when you get that 10,000 sales spike on the Kindle store, you can thank Nancy.
And John.
and John.
And make a donation to the Maine Seacoast Mission.
That's right. That's right.
So, John, how can people get in touch with you if they want to follow up?
Sure. So my email is jzavodny@seacoastmission.org. You can also email the mission itself at info@seacoastmission.org. You know, those are two good ways to find me. Right now, you know, my response time on emails is just through the roof. I spend so much time at my computer.
Yeah. And Zavodny is Zavodny. So that's J Zavodny at seacoastmission.org. And you can expect a fast reply, I know from experience. So, John, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate it. And yeah, when this whole COVID thing is over and I can start coming to visit down east again, I'll sail my schooner from Portland right down
That's
there,
right.
running
That's right.
before the wind.
Come up down east and see us.
Well, thanks so much. And I hope everybody in PR Maven Nation enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. And I hope you have a great day. That's it for this week's episode. I'd like to thank you for listening. And if you feel that you've gotten value out of today's conversation, consider leaving a 5-star review on iTunes or whatever app you're using to tune in. If you haven't subscribed yet, you should do so. I release a new episode each week, and subscribing will make sure you get an alert when there's a new episode. You can also join the PR Maven Nation by going to prmaven.com/nation and clicking join. It's free, and it's a great community of like-minded individuals who are all looking to learn and grow from one another. If you have an Alexa-enabled device, be sure to add the PR Maven Marketing Minute to your daily flash briefing menu. Thanks again for listening, and have a great rest of your week, PR Maven Nation.